I remember being at the gym late one night and I walked into the weight room and there was nobody there except one other person. And that other person was Jesse Jackson. I remember thinking, I hope he doesn't ask me to spot him because I'm not in the mood to interact with anyone. Next thing I knew, he asked me to spot him on the bench press. We're often called upon to do things we don't want to do, and then we end up doing them anyway. We wonder where's the free will in that? When no one's around, we sometimes exhibit our best selves, even when the only person who knows about it is Jesse Jackson. Even if we're not thankful for the opportunity, sometimes all we can say is, "You're welcome." Welcome. Welcome to Sunday Coffee Hour. I'm Stanley Smith. At Sunday Coffee Hour, we talk about everything and nothing. This Sunday, we talked about being a recluse in Manhattan, spending time in Death Valley, having a destination divorce, bed bug protocol, and having a huge uterus. The readings at Washington National Cathedral were from Isaiah. I will call your generation by name. And from Thessalonians, knowledge comes to you through the Holy Spirit in love and power. The gospel reading was from Matthew. Christ came and treated people without partiality. At Washington National Cathedral, the sermon was by Jan Cope. Jan said that during times like these, she turns to the scriptures, most notably the Psalms. She quoted Martin Luther King, who said, "The arc of history is short, but it always bends toward justice." Jan said the Psalms speak to both praise and lament. And then she had the camera pan a stained glass window at the cathedral to illustrate the point. The stained glass showed one figure buckling under in lament and another figure pointing toward heaven as a source of hope. Jan said the arc of justice in the window is represented by the Euphrates River running through the scene. I I love Jan. I love anyone who can get the word Euphrates into a sermon. Jan was filling in for the Bishop of Jerusalem, Assam Nahom, who was scheduled to speak at National this Sunday. Bishop Nahom offered his message via technology from the Holy Land. He reminded us that humanity is the crown of creation, and he challenged us to be fully human and see the humanity in everyone else. Where's the humanity in multiculturalism? Whenever we try to include everyone, someone is always excluded. Christ came and did not practice partiality. Bishop Nahom said it's not always easy to speak the language of love and reconciliation, but we're called to do so. In a rather brazen plug at the end of his remarks, he encourages us all to visit the Holy Land once this current conflict is over. The economics of the tourist trade is the lifeblood for the region. I remember when Bishop Nahom preached at St. James Cathedral a few years ago. At the time, he cautioned that Jerusalem was in danger of becoming the Disneyland of religion. Given the choice now of erring on the side of Disneyland or the devastation of economic collapse, the former apparently is the most practical option. At St. James Cathedral, the sermon was by Christopher Griffin. It was Founders Day at St. James when they celebrate their past and the on-again, off-again status of being the cathedral and all the entitlements and responsibilities that come along with that. Chris said that in the War of the Worlds film of the 1950s, church was the only safe place to be from the invading aliens. And in the updated version of the film a few years ago, church was the first place that the space aliens blew up. Chris said they tell us that 80% of Americans don't go to church anymore. But Chris said, I say to that, well, but 20% of us still do, and you're all invited. In the last few weeks, we've been reminded that church represents the largest number of volunteers in the nation. And historically, going to church represents the most significant form of civic engagement. So is the dip in attendance a reflection on the decline of moral certitude of church or of civic engagement? That's a rhetorical question. We hear the answer in all the voices of people complaining about everything. Where is the engagement in that? Chris said some churches have not survived, but not St. James. In the past, when the going got rough, some churches added on instead of closing down. Chris said the answer to all that we have to be thankful for is to simply say, "You're welcome." It's the best certitude we can have. At Coffee Hour, we talked about Robert Sapolsky's new book, Determined. The book brings into question the very existence of free will. Mr. Sapolsky said he lost his faith in the concept of free will at age 13. In the book, it talks about the idea that things in the past we called free will have now been reclassified as clinical aberrations and mistaken thought. He writes, "We are nothing more or less than the sum of that which we cannot control, our biology, our environment, our interactions, our DNA." We can look to literature and arts for examples. In the novel Anna Karenina, I never finished the book because I knew how it was going to end based on the opening train station scene. I knew it was not going to end well. And in the opera Carmen, we have the tarot card reader in the marketplace scene who suggests to the protagonist's mind the notion that seals her fate. Perhaps there's not as much free will in the world as we'd like to think. But instead of our DNA, we might think of it as being our disposition. We used to hear terms like generous to a fault, or too trusting for his own good, or even too good to be true. Perhaps our natural disposition sets us on a course for good and for bad, beyond our sense of choice. Our greatest weakness may be the very genius of ourselves. In the play Long Day's Journey into Night, Mary Tyrone is both strong and vulnerable, domineering and victim, reaching toward heaven and literally buckling down in lament. Eugene O'Neill said about his characters, at the final curtain, the characters are trapped in their past, leaning on each other in the present. They are unforgiving, yet innocent, loving and scorning, understanding, yet not understanding, forgiving, but also doomed, never being able to forget. They're a family held together, yet torn apart. At the Palestinian protest rally in Grant Park this weekend, I spoke to a Palestinian man. I asked him about the narrative shift in the Middle East. He said it's because of Generation Z. They see things logically and not emotionally, like our generation. I believe it was Robert Putnam who said that generations are not stacked vertically upon each other, but rest horizontally, leaning into each other. Yes, we are trapped in our past, yet we are leaning on the present generation also. In the Eugene O'Neill play about the dysfunctional family, we wonder, where is the free will in the familial relationship? Modern drugs and therapy mitigate many of its ill effects. Life itself seems to have been reclassified as a clinical aberration. But where's the genius in that? From God's perspective, he's given us the opportunity of this life. And all we can say to that is, you're welcome. If you would like to join us at Sunday Coffee Hour is every Sunday at 12 noon Central Time on Zoom. I will include my email in the description of this video. I'll be happy to send you an invitation. And I look forward to seeing you very, very soon.